r/AITA father-in-law called me names, so I sued him for defamation. AITA for suing my father-in-law for defamation after he systematically destroyed my reputation? I never thought I'd be the kind of person to record phone calls, but here we are. My phone is literally buzzing with notifications from my lawyer right now as I type this, and I'm honestly shaking. This all started 6 months ago when my father-in-law, Richard, cornered me at his country club after my husband Jake's birthday dinner. Picture this: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, the whole 9 yards of old money sophistication. Richard pulls me aside while Jake is saying goodbye to his cousins and slides a manila envelope across the table. "What's this?" I asked, genuinely confused. "A post-nuptial agreement. Sign it, and we can all move forward as a family." I opened it right there, and my blood went cold. This wasn't just about protecting family assets. This thing would have left me with basically nothing if Jake and I ever divorced, regardless of circumstances. It even had clauses about my appropriate behavior and how I should conduct myself in social situations. Richard, Jake, and I have been married for 2 years. We're happy. Why would I sign this? His smile disappeared completely. "Because, sweetheart, some of us can see exactly what you are." I should have walked away then. God, I should have just walked away. Instead, I said, "And what exactly am I? A gold digger who got her claws into my son before he knew better." I laughed. Actually laughed. Because the irony was incredible. I make 6 figures in marketing, I paid for half our wedding, and I insisted we split the mortgage on our house. But Richard had apparently already made up his mind about who I was the day Jake brought me home. When I refused to sign, he just nodded slowly and said, "I see. Well, I suppose we'll have to handle this differently then." I thought he meant awkward family dinners. Maybe some passive-aggressive comments at holidays. I was so wrong. Within 2 weeks, my sister-in-law stopped returning my calls. Jake's college friends suddenly seemed uncomfortable around me at a barbecue. Then my own colleague, Sarah, pulled me aside at work and asked if everything was okay at home because she'd heard some concerning things about my marriage. That's when I realized Richard wasn't just being a difficult father-in-law. He was systematically destroying my reputation, one conversation at a time. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago when my boss called me into her office. Apparently, someone had reached out to her expressing concerns about my character and whether I was trustworthy with client relationships. She wouldn't say who, but I knew. Of course I knew. Richard had moved beyond just family and friends. He was coming for my career. That night, I told Jake everything. He was horrified but also defensive. "Dad wouldn't do that. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. He's just protective." When I suggested we confront his father together, Jake agreed, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Like maybe, just maybe, his dad's concerns were valid. So I started recording our conversations. Every single one. Last week, Richard called me directly. 37 minutes of pure venom about how I was destroying his family, how I was manipulative and calculating, and how he was protecting his son from a mistake. He also made it very clear that he wasn't done talking to people about my true nature. That recording is currently in my lawyer's hands, along with testimonies from 4 people who've heard Richard's lies firsthand. The lawsuit was filed yesterday morning. The fallout has been absolutely nuclear. Jake found out about the lawsuit when his father called him screaming at 6 a.m. yesterday. I was in the shower when I heard Jake's voice through the bathroom door, and the tone made my stomach drop. When I came out, he was sitting on our bed with his head in his hands. "Please tell me this is some kind of mistake," he said without looking up. I wrapped my towel tighter and sat beside him. "It's not a mistake. You sued my father. You actually sued him." His voice was flat, like he couldn't quite process it. "Jake, we talked about this. You heard what he's been doing. I thought you'd confront him. Maybe get Mom involved to mediate. I didn't think you'd go nuclear and drag our family through a public lawsuit." That stung. "Your family? What about me? What about what he's done to my reputation, my career?" Jake finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Distance. Like he was looking at a stranger. "He's still my father, Emma." 3 simple words that felt like a chasm opening between us. The rest of the day was a blur of tense silences and Jake fielding phone calls from various family members. His mother called twice, crying. His uncle threatened to handle this quietly if I dropped the suit. His cousin texted asking if I'd lost my mind. But the call that really got to me was from Jake's sister, Melissa. "Emma, what the hell are you thinking?" she said when I answered. "Do you have any idea what this is going to do to our family? Mel, your father has been systematically lying about me for months. He's trying to destroy my career. How is that okay? So you destroy him back? You know what this lawsuit is going to do? It's going to air every piece of dirty laundry we have. Dad's business dealings, his personal finances, everything. The press is going to have a field day." That gave me pause. I hadn't really thought about the media attention a lawsuit against a prominent businessman might generate. Richard owns 3 luxury car dealerships and sits on 2 charitable boards. This wasn't going to stay quiet. "Maybe your father should have thought about that before he decided to wage war on my reputation," I said, but even I could hear how defensive I sounded. "Look, I know Dad can be intense. But Emma, this is going to destroy our family. Is that really what you want?" After she hung up, I sat in our kitchen feeling like I might throw up. Was I doing the right thing? Or was I just proving Richard right, that I was vindictive and destructive? Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news about your lawsuit. Richard told me what you were like, but I didn't realize how right he was. Hope it was worth destroying a family for money." I screenshotted it and sent it to my lawyer. Evidence. But the real gut punch came this morning. Jake's college friend Mark called him, and I could hear the entire conversation from the kitchen. "Dude, I have to ask, is everything okay? Because some of the stuff your dad told me about Emma, and now this lawsuit, man, I'm worried about you." I realized then that this wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. Every day this drags out, every piece of evidence that gets revealed, every family secret that comes to light, it's all going to be seen through the lens of Richard's narrative. That I'm the destructive outsider who brought chaos to their perfect family. Jake hasn't said a word to me since that phone call. And my lawyer just emailed saying Richard's attorney wants to meet. The meeting with Richard's attorney was set for Thursday at 2 p.m. I spent 3 sleepless nights rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd present myself, what I'd wear to look professional but not aggressive. My lawyer, Patricia Chen, assured me this was just a preliminary discussion, feeling each other out, she called it. I should have known Richard would turn it into a performance. When Patricia and I walked into the conference room at Morrison & Associates, Richard was already there with not one, but 3 attorneys. He'd also brought Jake's uncle Robert, who apparently had business concerns about the lawsuit, and somehow my former colleague David from my previous job. What is David doing here? I whispered to Patricia. She looked as blindsided as I felt. I have no idea. This isn't what we agreed to. Richard's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Thompson, smiled like a shark. Ms. Chen, thank you for coming. We thought it might be productive to have some character witnesses present. Character witnesses. At a preliminary meeting. My stomach dropped. Richard, I said directly, ignoring protocol, what is this? He looked at me with fake concern that made my skin crawl. Emma, sweetheart, I'm just trying to resolve this unfortunate situation. David here worked with you at Morrison Marketing, didn't he? Perhaps he could provide some context about your professional relationships. David wouldn't meet my eyes. We'd never been close, but we'd been friendly enough. Apparently not friendly enough for him to warn me he was going to ambush me at my own settlement meeting. Patricia stood up. This is highly irregular. We came here for a discussion between counsel, not some kind of character assassination tribunal. Please, sit, Thompson said smoothly. We're all here in good faith. David simply has some information that might help us understand the fuller picture of Ms. Emma's patterns of behavior. Patterns of behavior. Like I was a criminal. For the next 45 minutes, I sat there while David recounted a completely twisted version of my time at Morrison Marketing. According to him, I was overly ambitious, had inappropriate relationships with male colleagues, and was always angling for advancement through personal connections rather than merit. None of it was illegal. None of it was even technically false. I was ambitious, I did have friendly relationships with male colleagues, and yes, I networked strategically. But the way David presented it, I sounded calculating and manipulative. The worst part? I could see Patricia taking notes, her expression growing more concerned by the minute. When David finished, Uncle Robert cleared his throat. I've known this family for 30 years, he began, and I've never seen Jake as conflicted as he's been since this marriage began. Richard's concerns aren't unfounded. That's when I snapped. Conflicted about what exactly? My voice was sharper than I intended. About having a wife who makes her own money? Who doesn't need his family's approval to exist? Richard leaned forward. There it is, he said quietly. That anger. That vindictiveness. This is exactly what I've been trying to protect my son from. And suddenly I realized what was happening. This wasn't a settlement meeting. This was a setup. Richard was goading me into losing my temper so his attorneys could point to my unstable behavior. Every word I said was being catalogued as evidence of exactly what he'd been telling people about me. Patricia put a warning hand on my arm, but it was too late. You want to see vindictive? I said, standing up. Keep playing games. Because my next call is to the financial forensics expert to dig into exactly how you've been moving money through your dealerships. I wonder what the IRS would think about some of those transactions. The room went dead silent. Thompson's smile disappeared. Uncle Robert looked pale. And Richard's mask finally slipped completely. You have no idea what you're threatening, he said, his voice ice cold. Try me. Patricia was pulling me toward the door, but I caught Richard's expression as we left. For the first time since this started, he looked scared. That should have felt like victory. Instead, driving home, all I could think about was Jake's face when he found out I'd just declared war on his entire family. The house was dark when I got home, which was weird because Jake's car was in the driveway. I found him sitting at our kitchen table in the dark, his phone face down in front of him. Jake? I flipped on the light, and he winced like it physically hurt. How'd the meeting go? His voice was completely flat. I set my purse down carefully, trying to read his mood. It was complicated. Your dad ambushed us with witnesses. I know. He picked up his phone and turned it toward me. The screen showed a text thread with his father. He sent me a play-by-play. Including the part where you threatened to sick the IRS on him. My heart sank. Of course Richard had called Jake immediately. Probably made it sound like I'd walked in there guns blazing. Jake, that's not how it happened. He set me up. He brought David from my old job to make me look. I don't care how it happened. Jake's voice cut through my explanation. Emma, do you understand what you just did? Dad's businesses employ 47 people. If you actually report him to the IRS over some vendetta. Vendetta? I stared at him. Jake, your father has been destroying my reputation for months. He's trying to get me fired. How is defending myself a vendetta? Because you're not just defending yourself anymore. Jake stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. You're going after his business, his livelihood, his employees' jobs. That's not defense, that's revenge. So I'm just supposed to let him ruin my career? Smile and take it because he's your dad? I'm supposed to choose between my wife and my father, is that it? The question hung between us like a loaded gun. Because that's exactly what this had become, wasn't it? A choice. Your father made this choice when he decided I was the enemy, I said quietly. Jake's phone buzzed. Then again. And again. He glanced down and his face went white. Oh, shit. What? It's already online. He turned his phone toward me, and I saw a headline from the local business journal, Luxury Auto Heir Richard Morrison faces defamation lawsuit from daughter-in-law. Below it was a photo of Richard at some charity gala, looking distinguished and philanthropic. Then there was a photo of me from my company's website, looking young and somehow predatory next to his gravitas. My phone started ringing. Patricia. Emma, we have a problem, she said before I could even say hello. Someone leaked this story to the press. This was supposed to stay quiet until discovery. How bad is it? Check Channel 7's website. I hung up and Googled. The story was everywhere. Local news, business blogs, even a gossip site had picked it up with the headline "Gold Digger" or "Victim." Local woman sues wealthy father-in-law. The comments section was brutal. Asterisk, classic gold digger behavior when the family sees through her act. Asterisk. Asterisk, why would you sue your husband's father unless you're trying to destroy the family for money? Asterisk. Asterisk, she looks exactly like the type who'd marry for money then play victim when called out. Asterisk. But then I saw others. Asterisk, good for her. Rich men think they can say whatever they want about women. Asterisk. Asterisk, if he's not lying, why is he scared of a defamation suit? Asterisk. Jake was reading over my shoulder. Emma, my phone hasn't stopped ringing. Mom's been crying all day. Melissa's kids are getting bullied at school because someone's dad saw the news. Kids are getting bullied? My stomach dropped. I hadn't thought about Jake's nieces and nephews. Sophia came home crying because some girl told her that her aunt was trying to steal her grandpa's money. I sat down hard in the chair Jake had vacated. Oh God. My cousin's wife just texted me. Their country club is asking them to take a break from membership until this gets resolved. Emma, this isn't just affecting Dad anymore. It's affecting everyone. My phone rang again. This time it was my boss. Emma? I've been getting calls all afternoon. I think we need to talk. After I hung up, Jake and I stared at each other across our kitchen table. I might lose my job, I whispered. And I might lose my family, he replied. For the first time since this started, I wondered if Richard had already won. Chunk 5. The meeting with my boss went exactly as badly as I'd expected, but somehow worse. Linda called me into her office first thing Friday morning, and I could tell from her expression that this wasn't going to be a supportive "we've got your back" conversation. She had printouts of the news articles spread across her desk like evidence at a crime scene. Emma, I'm going to be direct, she said, not even offering me a seat. We've had 3 clients call this morning asking if you're still handling their accounts. My mouth went dry. What did you tell them? That we're evaluating the situation. But Emma, Morrison Marketing isn't just any company, they're one of our biggest competitors. Having our senior account manager in a public legal battle with their former colleague, it's a conflict of interest nightmare. I felt the floor dropping out from under me. Linda, David left Morrison 3 years ago. He barely worked with me, and he certainly doesn't speak for the company. It doesn't matter what he speaks for. It matters what our clients think when they see headlines about our employee being called vindictive and calculating in business publications. She shuffled the papers, not meeting my eyes. I'm putting you on administrative leave pending resolution of this legal matter. You're suspending me? For being the victim of defamation? I'm protecting the company. And honestly? I'm protecting you too. The phones haven't stopped ringing with reporters wanting comments. As if on cue, her assistant knocked and cracked the door open. Linda? Channel 7 is here. They're asking to speak with Emma. I felt like I was going to be sick. There are reporters here? At my office? Linda stood up, her expression actually sympathetic for the first time. Use the back exit. I'll have security make sure they don't follow you. Walking to my car through the parking garage like a criminal fleeing the scene was a new low I hadn't anticipated. But it got worse when I got home and found Jake packing a suitcase. Where are you going? I asked, though some part of me already knew. My parents' house. Just for a few days. He wouldn't look at me directly. Emma, I can't. I need to think. You're leaving me? Now? I'm not leaving you. I'm taking a break from this insanity. He gestured vaguely at everything. Do you know what it was like this morning? I had to sneak out the back of my office because there were reporters in our lobby. My secretary fielded 11 calls asking for comment on my family situation. Jake, this is exactly what your father wanted. He's trying to isolate me, make me look like the problem. Maybe you are the problem. The words exploded out of him, and then we were both just staring at each other in shock. I didn't mean. He started, but it was too late. Yes, you did. My voice came out steadier than I felt. You think I'm the problem. Just like he said you would. Jake's shoulders sagged. I think this whole situation is the problem. 6 months ago we were happy. We were talking about kids, maybe buying a bigger house. Now I'm choosing between my wife and my entire family, and everyone I've ever cared about is getting hurt. Including me, I whispered. Including you, he agreed quietly. But Emma, you chose this nuclear option. You could have handled it differently. After he left, I sat in our living room scrolling through social media, which was absolutely the worst thing I could have done. The story had exploded online. Someone had found my college photos from Facebook. There were discussions about my clothes, my makeup, whether I looked like a gold digger. One particularly cruel thread was analyzing my wedding photos, pointing out how calculating my smile looked. But then Patricia called with news that made everything infinitely more complicated. Emma, Richard's attorney called. They want to settle. I sat up straighter. That's good, right? If he wants to settle, it means he's worried about what we'll find in discovery. It means he's very worried. They're offering $250,000 for you to drop the suit and sign a non-disclosure agreement. $250,000. That was more money than I'd ever seen. Enough to disappear, start over somewhere new, maybe even start my own marketing firm. What's the catch? The NDA is comprehensive. You can never discuss Richard Morrison, anything related to this situation, or your marriage to Jake. Publicly or privately. Meaning I can never defend myself if this comes up again. Exactly. And Emma, they're also requiring that you and Jake get divorced. I actually laughed, the sound bitter and sharp in my empty house. Of course they are. They're framing it as allowing both parties to move on cleanly, Patricia continued. But essentially, they want you erased from the Morrison family entirely. So there it was. Richard's final offer, take the money and disappear forever. The worst part was, sitting alone in my house with my husband gone and my career in ruins, it was starting to sound tempting. The temptation lasted exactly 12 hours. I spent Friday night pacing our empty house, doing the math over and over. $250,000. Enough to restart my life somewhere Richard Morrison's influence couldn't reach. Jake was already gone anyway, maybe this was just accepting reality instead of fighting a war I'd already lost. Then Saturday morning, my doorbell rang at 7 a.m. Standing on my porch was a woman I'd never seen before, maybe 45, with tired eyes and an expensive handbag clutched against her chest like armor. "Are you Emma Morrison?" she asked. "Yes." I kept the screen door closed between us. "My name is Catherine Walsh. I saw the news about your lawsuit." She took a shaky breath. "Richard Morrison destroyed my daughter's life 5 years ago. I think we need to talk." 20 minutes later, we were sitting at my kitchen table while Catherine told me a story that made my blood run cold. "My daughter Jessica worked at Morrison Luxury Motors as their marketing coordinator," she began, her hands wrapped around the coffee mug I'd given her like she needed the warmth. "She was 26, just out of her master's program. Brilliant girl, full of ideas about modernizing their social media presence." I had a sinking feeling about where this was going. She's beautiful." "Was beautiful," Catherine corrected herself quietly. "Richard took a personal interest in her work. Started calling her into private meetings, taking her to client dinners. Said she had special potential." "Catherine." I started, but she held up a hand. "When she rejected his advances, he fired her within the week. But that wasn't enough." Her voice grew harder. "He told everyone she was unstable, that she'd been inappropriate with clients, that she'd stolen marketing materials when she left." My stomach dropped. The same playbook. The exact same systematic destruction. Jessica couldn't get another job in marketing anywhere in the city. The rumors followed her everywhere. "She's working retail now, living in my basement, too anxious to even date because she's convinced everyone's heard Richard's version of her story." "Why didn't she sue him?" Catherine's laugh was bitter. "With what money? Against Richard Morrison's legal team?" Jessica was drowning in student loans and couldn't afford an attorney who'd go up against that level of power. "But I can," I said slowly. "But you can," she agreed. "Emma, when I saw that settlement offer mentioned in the Business Journal article this morning." "How did you know about the settlement offer?" "That detail definitely hadn't been public." Catherine's expression grew grim. "Because Richard's people have been calling Jessica all week, asking if she'd be willing to make a statement about your pattern of false accusations against successful men." The coffee mug slipped from my hands, shattering against the kitchen floor. "They found Jessica?" My voice came out as a whisper. "Thursday night. Same day as your meeting. Offered her $50,000 to sign an affidavit saying you'd contacted her, trying to coordinate false stories against Richard. But I've never even met her. They know that. Just like they know Jessica would never take their money." Catherine leaned forward. "But Emma, if you settle and disappear, what's to stop them from manufacturing that affidavit anyway? From paying someone else to claim they were Jessica?" The implication hit me like a physical blow. Richard wasn't just trying to buy my silence, he was actively building a defense that painted me as someone who recruited other women to lie about him. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Dad says you have until Monday to accept the settlement. Please just take it, Emma. Let us all move on." I showed Catherine the message, and her face hardened. "There are 3 other women," she said quietly. "Women who worked for Richard or his business associates. Women who crossed him somehow and had their reputations systematically destroyed." "3 others?" "That I know of. There might be more." Catherine reached into her purse and pulled out a thick manila folder. "I've been collecting their stories for years, hoping someone would eventually have the resources to fight back." I stared at the folder like it might explode. Taking it meant crossing a line I couldn't uncross. It meant this wasn't about me anymore, it was about all of us. "If I don't settle," I said slowly, "this gets bigger. Much bigger. And if you do settle, Richard learns that his system works perfectly. That he can destroy any woman who inconveniences him, as long as he's willing to pay enough to clean up the mess afterward." Outside, a car pulled into my driveway. Through the window, I could see Jake getting out of his SUV. Monday's deadline suddenly felt very far away. Jake walked through the front door like he still lived here, but everything about his posture screamed discomfort. He stopped short when he saw Catherine sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by scattered papers and the remnants of my broken coffee mug. "Emma? Who's this?" Catherine stood up smoothly, extending her hand with a kind of confidence that came from years of practice. "I'm Catherine Walsh. I think your father destroyed my daughter's career." The color drained from Jake's face. "I'm sorry, what?" "Jake," I said carefully, "maybe you should sit down." "No, I think I should leave." He was already backing toward the door. "Emma, whatever this is, whatever you're planning." "Your father has done this before," Catherine interrupted, her voice steady but sharp. "Multiple times. To young women who worked for him or refused his advances." Jake's hand was on the doorknob, but he hadn't turned it. That's not possible. My father would never." Catherine opened the folder and pulled out a photograph. A young woman with dark hair and bright eyes, standing in front of a Morrison Luxury Motors sign. "This is my daughter Jessica on her first day of work." She was so excited. She laid out another photo. The same woman, but hollow-cheeked and exhausted, standing behind a department store counter. "This is Jessica last month." "Stop." Jake's voice cracked. "Just stop." But Catherine wasn't finished. She spread out more documents, termination letters, emails, witness statements. "Emma isn't the first woman your father has targeted, and if she takes that settlement, she won't be the last." Jake finally turned around, his eyes wild. "Why are you here?" "Why now?" "Because Richard's people contacted my daughter Thursday night," Catherine said. "They want her to lie about Emma. They're willing to pay her to sign a false statement." "That's impossible." But Jake's protest sounded weak even to him. I stood up, glass crunching under my feet. "Jake, I know this is hard to hear, but..." "Hard to hear?" Jake's voice rose. "Emma, you've been sitting here plotting with a stranger about how to destroy my father's life. I've been learning that your father has been destroying women's lives for years. Based on what? Stories? Accusations? Where's the proof?" Catherine's expression hardened. "The same kind of proof Emma has. Recorded conversations, witness statements, documented patterns of behavior. And you just happened to show up here the weekend before Emma has to make a decision about the settlement? That's not suspicious at all. That stopped me cold. Jake was right, the timing was incredibly convenient. Catherine, how did you know about the settlement deadline? For the first time, Catherine looked uncomfortable. I told you, it was mentioned in the Business Journal article. No, it wasn't. Jake pulled out his phone, scrolling quickly. I've read every article about this lawsuit. None of them mentioned settlement negotiations. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Catherine's confident demeanor cracked slightly. I have sources. People who've been watching Richard's legal dealings for years. What people? I asked, my stomach starting to churn. Other victims. Women who've been waiting for someone to finally take him on. Jake stepped closer to the table, his expression shifting from defensive to suspicious. Or someone who wants to make sure Emma doesn't take the settlement. Someone with their own agenda. What are you implying? I'm implying that maybe you're not some random good Samaritan. Maybe someone sent you here to convince my wife to keep fighting a battle that's already destroying both our lives. Catherine gathered her papers quickly, shoving them back into the folder. Your father has hurt a lot of people, Mr. Morrison. Emma has a chance to stop him. Or Emma has a chance to take $250,000 and start over somewhere safe, Jake shot back. Away from all of this insanity. After Catherine left, Jake and I stood in our kitchen staring at each other. The broken mug was still scattered across the floor between us. Do you believe her? I asked finally. Jake ran his hands through his hair. I don't know what to believe anymore. But Emma, doesn't it seem convenient? You're about to settle, and suddenly this woman appears with exactly the story you need to justify continuing to fight. The terrible thing was, he was right. It did seem convenient. But so did Richard's settlement offer coming right after the story went public. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Catherine Walsh's daughter never worked for Morrison Motors. Might want to check employment records before you trust her story. I showed Jake the message, and his face went white. Emma, what if this whole thing is bigger than we thought? The anonymous text felt like ice water in my veins. I stared at the message until the words blurred together, my brain struggling to process what this meant. Emma? Jake's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. What are you thinking? I sank into the nearest chair, my legs suddenly unreliable. I'm thinking I don't know who to trust anymore. Jake crouched down and started picking up the larger pieces of broken ceramic, his movements careful and deliberate. Maybe that's exactly what someone wants. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Patricia. Emma, we have a problem. A big one. Her usually composed voice was tight with stress. Richard's legal team just filed a motion claiming you're coordinating with other alleged victims to manufacture evidence. Based on what? Someone photographed Catherine Walsh leaving your house this morning. They're claiming it proves you're orchestrating a conspiracy to frame Richard with false accusations. I watched Jake's shoulders stiffen as he continued cleaning up glass. He could hear every word. Patricia, I've never seen that woman before today. I had no idea she was coming. I believe you, but Emma, this changes everything. They're not just defending against your lawsuit anymore, they're going on the offensive. They're painting you as the ringleader of some elaborate revenge scheme. After I hung up, Jake stood slowly, his hands full of ceramic shards. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. Did you contact Catherine Walsh? Or anyone else who's had problems with my father? The question hit like a slap. No. Jake, I swear to you, I had never heard that name before she showed up here. But you recorded private phone conversations with my father. You hired a private investigator-level lawyer. You're clearly capable of research and strategy. His voice was getting quieter, more clinical. How do I know you haven't been building a case for months? Because you know me. The words came out sharper than I intended. Jake, we've been married for 2 years. Do you really think I'm capable of orchestrating some elaborate conspiracy? 6 months ago, I didn't think you were capable of suing my father either. That silence stretched between us until my phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Morrison? This is Detective Amanda Rivera with the Metro Police Financial Crimes Unit. I'd like to ask you some questions about your relationship with Catherine Walsh. My blood went cold. I'm sorry, what? Mrs. Walsh is currently being investigated for fraud related to a previous lawsuit against a different prominent businessman. Her showing up at your house raises some concerns about potential coordination between cases. Jake was watching my face, and I knew my expression was giving everything away. Detective, I met Catherine Walsh for the first time this morning. She approached me, not the other way around. I understand. Still, I'd like to meet with you Monday morning to discuss the situation. Given the high-profile nature of your current lawsuit, we want to make sure there's no improper coordination happening. When I hung up, Jake was already reaching for his jacket. Where are you going? Back to my parents. Emma, this is spiraling completely out of control. He paused at the door. Financial crimes detectives? Really? Jake, I didn't do anything wrong. Maybe not. But someone's playing games here, and we're both caught in the middle. He looked back at me, and I saw something that made my chest tight. The settlement deadline is Monday morning. The detective wants to see you Monday morning. That's not a coincidence. After he left, I sat alone in our kitchen, staring at my phone. 2 missed calls from reporters. 4 texts from numbers I didn't recognize. And 1 email that made my stomach drop. It was from my lawyer, with the subject line, Urgent Settlement Offer Withdrawn. The message was brief. Richard Morrison's legal team has formally withdrawn their settlement offer, effective immediately. They're now pursuing a countersuit for conspiracy and harassment. We need to talk. Outside, a car was parked across the street that hadn't been there before. When I looked through the window, I could see someone in the driver's seat with what looked like a camera. I realized then that this wasn't just about defamation anymore. This wasn't even about money. Someone was playing a much bigger game, and I was apparently the perfect pawn. The question was whether Jake was a pawn too, or if he was already 3 moves ahead of me. The security camera footage changed everything. Patricia called me at 6 a.m. Monday morning, her voice tight with an urgency I'd never heard before. Emma, don't go to the police station. Meet me at my office instead. We need to review something before you talk to Detective Rivera. An hour later, I was sitting in her conference room staring at a laptop screen that showed the exterior of my house from Saturday morning. The timestamp read 6:47 a.m., 13 minutes before Catherine Walsh had rung my doorbell. Watch the street, Patricia said, pointing at the screen. A dark sedan pulled up 3 houses down from mine. Catherine Walsh got out, but she didn't walk directly to my door. Instead, she stood by her car for nearly 10 minutes, talking on her phone. Even in the grainy footage, her body language was tense, like she was receiving instructions. She was talking to someone, I whispered. It gets worse. Patricia fast-forwarded to after Catherine left my house. The same sedan drove directly to the end of my street, where it stopped next to another car, a car I recognized. Jake's SUV. No, I breathed, leaning closer to the screen. No, that's not possible. But there it was, clear as day. Catherine Walsh walked from her car to Jake's passenger window. They spoke for less than 2 minutes before she got back in her car and drove away. Jake followed shortly after. 45 minutes later, Jake had shown up at my door, pretending to be surprised to find a stranger in our kitchen. The neighbor across the street installed this system last month, Patricia explained. Apparently they've had issues with package theft. They sent me this footage after seeing the news coverage about your case. I couldn't breathe. Jake knew she was coming. It appears so. Emma, I need to ask you directly, is there any possibility your husband is working with his father to discredit your lawsuit? The question hung in the air like poison. Every conversation from the past week replayed in my head with new context. Jake's sudden decision to stay at his parents' house. His convenient arrival right after Catherine showed up. His immediate suspicion about her timing and motives. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake, I know things are complicated, but I love you. Whatever happens today, remember that. He knows about the detective meeting, I said, showing Patricia the message. I never told him the specific time. Patricia's expression darkened. Emma, I think you need to consider the possibility that this entire settlement offer was theater. A way to put you in an impossible position where any choice you made could be used against you. You mean? I mean, what if Richard never intended to settle? What if the real plan was to let you refuse the offer, then use Catherine's appearance to prove you're coordinating false accusations? Or alternatively, if you took the settlement, they'd have your silence and 250,000 reasons to paint you as someone who was just after money all along. My stomach churned. Then Jake's been lying to me for a week. Or longer. Patricia pulled up another file on her laptop. I did some digging over the weekend. The postnuptial agreement Richard wanted you to sign? Jake's signature is already on it. The room spun. What? Page 12, dated 2 weeks before Richard ever showed it to you. Your husband signed off on those terms before his father even approached you. I stared at Jake's familiar signature, the confident scrawl I'd seen on birthday cards and mortgage documents and our marriage certificate. He'd agreed to the postnuptial before I'd even seen it. This whole thing was planned, I whispered. The dinner, the country club, cornering me with the agreement, Jake knew it was coming. It's starting to look that way. My phone rang. Detective Rivera. Mrs. Morrison, I'm afraid we need to move up our meeting. There's been a development in the Catherine Walsh situation that requires immediate attention. What kind of development? She's been found dead in her hotel room. The phone slipped from my hands, clattering against the conference table. Catherine Walsh was dead. The woman who'd sat in my kitchen Saturday morning, who'd told me about her daughter Jessica, who'd brought me documents about Richard's other victims, she was dead, less than 48 hours after walking into my life. Emma? Patricia's voice seemed to come from very far away. What did the detective say? I couldn't speak. Couldn't think. Could only stare at my phone and try to process what this meant. Because if Catherine was dead, and if Jake had known she was coming to see me, then someone had wanted me to meet her badly enough to orchestrate the entire encounter. Someone who now needed to make sure she could never tell anyone why. Detective Rivera's office felt like an interrogation room from a crime show, complete with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look guilty. I sat across from her with Patricia beside me, trying to process the impossible reality that Catherine Walsh was dead. Mrs. Morrison, I need you to walk me through Saturday morning again, Detective Rivera said, her pen poised over a legal pad. Start from when you first heard Catherine Walsh's name. I told you, I'd never heard her name before she showed up at my door. But you let a complete stranger into your house at 7 a.m. on a Saturday? The question felt like a trap. She said she had information about my father-in-law. Given everything that's been happening. Everything that's been happening, Rivera repeated slowly. You mean your very public lawsuit against Richard Morrison? Yes. Rivera pulled out a manila folder that looked sickeningly familiar. Mrs. Walsh checked into the Marriott downtown Thursday night. Hotel records show she made 17 phone calls between Friday and Saturday morning. Guess who she called most frequently? My mouth went dry. I have no idea. A law firm in Chicago that specializes in class action suits against wealthy defendants. Rivera leaned back in her chair. Apparently, Catherine Walsh was what's known as a case recruiter. She found potential plaintiffs for lawyers willing to go after deep pockets. The room seemed to tilt. You're saying she was working for lawyers? Not just trying to help me? I'm saying Catherine Walsh made a living finding people like you and convincing them to join larger lawsuits. She'd get a finder's fee for every viable plaintiff she brought in. Patricia spoke up for the first time. Detective, what does any of this have to do with her death? Catherine Walsh died of an apparent heart attack in her hotel room Sunday night. No signs of foul play, but she was 38 years old with no history of cardiac problems. Rivera's eyes stayed fixed on me. She also had a typed note in her room claiming she'd lied to Mrs. Morrison about her daughter's employment with Morrison Motors. What? The word came out as a croak. According to the note, Jessica Walsh never worked for Richard Morrison. Catherine made up the entire story to convince you to reject the settlement offer. My brain felt like it was short-circuiting. But why would she do that? Money, Mrs. Morrison. The Chicago firm was building a pattern of behavior case against her father-in-law. They needed you to refuse the settlement and continue fighting so they could add your case to a larger class action. Catherine was supposed to convince you that you weren't alone, that there were other victims. And my husband? I asked quietly. The security footage shows them talking. Rivera's expression shifted slightly. Your husband contacted us Friday night. He was concerned about a strange woman approaching you and wanted to know if we had any information about her background. Jake called you? He did. Said he was worried someone was trying to manipulate you into making bad decisions about the lawsuit. Rivera consulted her notes. When he saw Catherine Walsh leaving your house Saturday morning, he followed her to ask what she'd told you. I felt like I was drowning. So Jake wasn't conspiring with her. He was trying to protect me. It appears so. Though I have to ask, Mrs. Morrison, did you know Catherine Walsh was being paid to influence your decision? No. I had no idea. Because if you were working with a Chicago firm to build a fraudulent case against Mr. Morrison. I wasn't. The words exploded out of me. I've never spoken to any lawyers in Chicago. I've never heard of class action anything. I just wanted my father-in-law to stop lying about me. Patricia put a warning hand on my arm, but Rivera was already leaning forward. Mrs. Morrison, I believe you. But someone orchestrated Catherine Walsh's visit. Someone who wanted you to reject that settlement offer badly enough to pay a professional recruiter to convince you that you had support. Who? That's what we're trying to figure out. Because Catherine Walsh's death might be natural, but the timing is awfully convenient for whoever was pulling the strings. As we left the police station, one thought kept echoing in my head. If Jake hadn't been betraying me, and Catherine had been lying to me, then who was really orchestrating this war against Richard Morrison? And why did they need me to be their weapon? The answer came in the form of a phone call I should never have answered. I was sitting in my car outside the police station, still reeling from Detective Rivera's revelations, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Normally I would have let it go to voicemail, but after everything that had happened, I couldn't ignore any call that might have answers. Mrs. Morrison? This is Thomas Chen from Chen and Associates in Chicago. My blood went cold. You're with the law firm Detective Rivera mentioned. I am. And I owe you an apology. His voice was smooth, professional, completely unapologetic despite his words. Catherine Walsh exceeded her instructions when she approached you. We never authorized her to fabricate stories about other victims. But you did send her to manipulate me. A pause. We sent her to inform you that you had legal options beyond your current representation. Mrs. Morrison, your case against Richard Morrison is exactly the kind of precedent we need to take on systematic abusers of power. I pressed my phone closer to my ear, my hands shaking. Catherine Walsh is dead. I'm aware. A tragedy. Catherine had some health issues she didn't disclose when we hired her. His tone didn't change at all. But Mrs. Morrison, her death doesn't change the fundamental truth. Your father-in-law has a pattern of destroying women who cross him, and you're in a unique position to stop him. By destroying my own life in the process? By accepting our representation. We have resources your current lawyer can't match. We can turn your individual case into something much bigger. Through my windshield, I could see Patricia walking toward her car, probably assuming I was right behind her. She had no idea I was potentially being recruited by the people who'd gotten Catherine killed. What exactly are you offering? I heard myself ask. Full legal support, a team of investigators, and most importantly, protection. Mrs. Morrison, someone wanted Catherine Walsh dead. Someone powerful enough to make a heart attack look natural. You need allies. You're saying Richard had her killed? I'm saying people with the resources to orchestrate elaborate legal strategies also have resources to protect themselves when those strategies threaten them. Thomas Chen's voice dropped. Your current lawsuit is small, containable. Richard can weather one disgruntled daughter-in-law. But a class action with multiple victims? That's an existential threat. My phone beeped with an incoming text from Jake. Where are you? We need to talk. I'm at the house. I have to go, I told Chen. Mrs. Morrison, wait. There's something else you need to know about your husband's family. The reason Richard is so desperate to stop you isn't just about his reputation. What do you mean? Morrison Luxury Motors is hemorrhaging money. Has been for 2 years. Your lawsuit is threatening to expose financial irregularities that go far beyond defamation. Chen paused for effect. Richard Morrison isn't just protecting his reputation. He's protecting himself from federal fraud charges. The line went dead. I sat in my car, staring at Jake's text message, while Thomas Chen's words echoed in my head. Financial irregularities. Federal fraud charges. Suddenly Richard's desperation to make me disappear made terrible sense. This wasn't about family reputation or hurt feelings. Richard Morrison was a criminal, and my lawsuit was threatening to uncover evidence that could send him to federal prison. Which meant everyone in his family, including Jake, either knew about the fraud and was complicit, or was about to have their entire world collapse when the truth came out. I needed to go home and face my husband. But first, I needed to decide whether I was walking into the arms of another victim, or directly into a trap set by someone who now had nothing left to lose. The drive home felt like driving toward my own execution. Thomas Chen's words kept replaying in my head: federal fraud charges, financial irregularities, someone powerful enough to make a heart attack look natural. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the engine. Jake's SUV was parked in its usual spot, and through the living room window I could see him pacing back and forth, his phone pressed to his ear. Even from outside, his body language screamed stress. I sat in my car for a full minute, trying to decide if the man I'd married was a victim or a conspirator. Then my phone buzzed with another unknown number. Don't go inside yet. The voice was female, urgent, whispering. Jake's on the phone with his father right now. They know about the Chicago lawyers. Who is this? Someone who's been watching the Morrison family for a very long time. Check your email. There's something you need to see before you talk to your husband. The line went dead. My email showed one new message from a Proton mail address, the real Morrison financial records. The attached files made my stomach drop. Bank transfers. Shell company registrations. Loan documents with forged signatures. The Morrison Luxury Motors empire wasn't just failing, it was built on systematically defrauded investors and falsified assets. Richard had been running an elaborate Ponzi scheme for at least 5 years. But what made me physically sick was the signature on several key documents. Jake's name. Jake's actual signature, not forged. Dated from last year, long before our marriage started falling apart. My husband hadn't just known about his father's crimes. He'd been actively participating in them. Through the window, I watched Jake end his phone call and run his hands through his hair in frustration. He walked to the front door and opened it, scanning the street until he spotted me in my car. "Emma," he called out. "What are you doing out there?" I forced myself to smile and wave, buying time while my brain raced. If Jake was involved in his father's fraud, then everything, our marriage, our fights about the lawsuit, even his supposed protective call to the police about Catherine, could have been calculated moves to control the situation. My phone buzzed with a text from the same unknown number, "Back door. Now. Before he gets suspicious." Against every instinct screaming at me to drive away, I got out of my car and walked toward Jake. "Sorry, I was just finishing a call with Patricia. How are you holding up?" He pulled me into a hug that felt simultaneously desperate and rehearsed. "Better now that you're here. We need to talk about what happens next." I know. This whole thing with Catherine Walsh was insane. More than insane. Jake's grip on me tightened. "Emma, I think we're in real danger." "From who?" "I'm not sure yet. But whoever sent that woman to manipulate you, whoever's been pulling strings behind the scenes, they're not going to stop." He pulled back to look at me, and I searched his face for any sign of deception. "I talked to Dad's security consultant today. He thinks someone's been planning this attack on our family for months." Security consultant. The phrase sent chills down my spine. What kind of attack? The kind that destroys everything we've built. Jake's eyes were intense, almost fevered. "Emma, I know you're angry about the lawsuit situation, but we need to present a united front now. Whatever's coming, we need to face it together." Over Jake's shoulder, I could see movement at our back fence. Someone was waiting in the shadows of our neighbor's yard. "Of course," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "We're stronger together." "Good. Because Dad's flying in some experts tonight. People who specialize in protecting families from coordinated attacks." Jake squeezed my hands. "They want to meet with both of us." "Experts. Flying in tonight." My throat went dry. "What kind of experts, Jake?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "The kind who make problems disappear." The phrase, "make problems disappear," hung in the air between us like a threat. Jake was still holding my hands, but his grip felt less like comfort and more like restraint. "What exactly does that mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "It means we're going to get through this together." Jake's thumb traced circles on my palm, a gesture that used to be soothing but now felt calculated. "Emma, I know the last few weeks have been hell. But I promise, after tonight, everything goes back to normal." Normal. As if anything about our situation could ever be normal again. "I should freshen up before we meet these experts," I said, gently extracting my hands from his. "Give me 20 minutes? Relief flickered across Jake's face. "Of course. They won't be here until 8 anyway." I headed toward our bedroom, hyper-aware of Jake's eyes following me. The financial documents were still pulled up on my phone, Jake's signature staring back at me from shell company after shell company. 5 years of fraud. Millions in stolen investor money. And my husband's name all over it. In our bathroom, I turned on the shower to mask any sound and crept to the bedroom window that faced our backyard. The figure I'd seen by the fence was still there, a woman in dark clothing, gesturing for me to come outside. My phone buzzed with a text from the same unknown number, "Service tunnel under the fence. Neighbor's yard. 5 minutes." I stared at the message, my heart hammering. Running meant admitting that Jake was dangerous. Staying meant trusting a husband who'd apparently been lying to me for years. From downstairs, I heard Jake's voice on another phone call. "No, she doesn't suspect anything yet. Yeah, the experts will handle it. Just make sure everything's ready on your end." The decision made itself. I grabbed my purse and the spare house key, then quietly opened the bedroom window. Our backyard was dark enough that I could slip out unnoticed if I stayed low. The service tunnel the text mentioned was an old drainage pipe that ran between our property and the neighbors, something left over from when this whole area was farmland. Getting to the fence meant crawling through our flower bed and praying Jake didn't look outside. Every second felt like an eternity. When I finally reached the tunnel opening, the woman was waiting on the other side. "Quickly," she whispered, helping me through. "They'll notice you're gone soon." In the neighbor's yard, I could finally see her face. She was maybe 50, with graying hair and intelligent eyes that reminded me of Catherine Walsh. My stomach dropped. "You're another recruiter," I accused. "Another person trying to manipulate me." "No." She pulled out what looked like a federal badge. "Agent Sarah Kim, FBI Financial Crimes Division. We've been investigating Richard Morrison for 18 months. The badge looked real, but after Catherine's lies, I didn't trust anything. "Prove it." She handed me her phone, which showed an active call to a number listed as FBI Field Office. A male voice answered, "Agent Kim? Status report. I have Emma Morrison. She's safe for now, but we need immediate extraction." "Copy that. Units en route." Agent Kim ended the call and looked at me seriously. "Mrs. Morrison, your lawsuit accidentally threatened to expose an ongoing federal investigation. We've been letting Richard think he's controlling the situation, but your husband just confirmed they're planning to eliminate loose ends tonight." "Eliminate?" My voice came out as a whisper. "The experts Jake mentioned? They're not lawyers." She glanced toward my house, where I could see Jake's silhouette moving past the living room window. "We intercepted communications about staging an accident. Making it look like grief over the lawsuit drove you to hurt yourself." The words hit me like a physical blow. Jake, my husband, the man I'd shared a bed with for 2 years, was planning to have me killed. "We need to go," Agent Kim said urgently. "Now." From my house came the sound of Jake's voice calling my name. Then footsteps on the stairs. He discovered I was gone. Jake's voice grew louder, more frantic. "Emma? Emma?" Agent Kim grabbed my arm. "We have to move. Now." But as we started toward the street, floodlights suddenly blazed across the neighbor's yard. Two black SUVs had pulled up, blocking both ends of the street. Men in dark suits were getting out, moving with military precision toward my house and the surrounding properties. Shit, Agent Kim breathed. They moved faster than we expected. My phone started ringing. Jake's ringtone. Answer it, Kim whispered. Act normal. Tell him you went for a walk to clear your head. With shaking hands, I accepted the call. Jake? I'm sorry, I just needed some air. Where are you? His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the panic underneath. Emma, it's not safe out there. Come home. Please. Through the neighbor's bushes, I could see more men surrounding our house. One was talking into a radio, coordinating something. I'm just around the block, I lied. I'll be back in 10 minutes. No. Tell me exactly where you are. I'm coming to get you. Agent Kim was frantically typing on her phone, then showed me the screen, backup delayed. Local police compromised. My stomach dropped. If Richard's reach extended into the police department, then we were completely alone. Emma? Jake's voice had gotten sharper. I can track your phone, you know. Just tell me where you are. He could track my phone. Of course he could, we were on the same family plan. I was carrying a beacon directly to our location. Agent Kim seemed to realize the same thing. She pulled out what looked like a small metal box and gestured for my phone. I handed it over, and she dropped it inside, sealing the lid. Signal blocker, she whispered. But now they know something's wrong. From our house came the sound of doors slamming, engine starting. Jake and his experts were mobilizing to find me. This way, Kim said, leading me toward the back of the neighbor's property. There's a park behind these houses. We can. A spotlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping across the yard. We dropped behind a garden shed just as voices carried across the fence. Check every house, someone ordered. She couldn't have gotten far. What about the FBI agent? Jake's voice. He knew about Kim. What FBI agent? The other voice sounded confused, annoyed. The one watching the house. My father said there might be federal surveillance. Agent Kim's face went pale beside me. She pulled out her phone and typed something quickly, then showed me the screen. I'm not FBI. My world tilted. What? She deleted the message and typed again, private investigator. Hired by Morrison's victims to build a case. I stared at her in the darkness, trying to process this new betrayal. Not FBI. Not federal protection. Another person with an agenda who'd lied to get me to trust her. But the voices outside were getting closer, and whether Kim was FBI or not, she wasn't the one planning to make me disappear tonight. I don't care who you are, I whispered. Just get us out of here. Kim nodded grimly. The park has a creek that runs under the main road. We can follow it too. The spotlight beam swung toward our hiding spot. There, someone shouted. Footsteps started running across the neighbor's yard, heading straight for us. Kim grabbed my hand. Run. We bolted from behind the shed just as three men rounded the corner. I heard shouting, the sound of a radio crackling, but I didn't look back. Behind us, Jake's voice cut through the night. Emma, please. You don't understand what you're running from. But I understood perfectly. I was running from the man I'd married, who'd been planning my death while telling me he loved me. The only question was whether we'd make it to that creek before his father's experts caught up with us. The creek was deeper than Kim had expected, the icy water rushing past our knees as we struggled through the concrete tunnel that ran under Highway 7. My dress was soaked, my phone was gone, and somewhere above us, Jake and his father's experts were probably coordinating a manhunt. But we'd made it. The tunnel opened into a drainage pond behind a 24-hour diner, and Kim's backup, Real backup this time, was waiting with 3 unmarked cars and enough federal agents to make me believe this nightmare might actually end. Mrs. Morrison? The lead agent, a woman about my age with kind eyes, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. I'm Agent Torres, FBI Financial Crimes. We've been building a case against your father-in-law for 2 years. 2 years? I was shivering so hard I could barely speak. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because we needed Richard to feel secure enough to make mistakes. Your lawsuit rattled him so badly that he started moving money frantically, trying to hide assets before discovery. Every transaction gave us more evidence. Agent Torres handed me a tablet showing bank records, wire transfers, falsified documents, a paper trail that painted Richard Morrison as someone who'd stolen over $12 million from investors. What about Jake? I asked quietly. Is he? Your husband started cooperating with us 6 months ago, Torres said gently. When he realized the extent of his father's fraud, he came forward. Everything tonight, the phone calls, the experts, even making you run, it was designed to get Richard to reveal his contingency plans. I stared at her. Jake's been working with you? The whole time. Mrs. Morrison, your husband has been wearing a wire for weeks. Every conversation with his father, every phone call about handling the Emma problem, we have it all recorded. Kim, whose real name turned out to be Detective Sarah Kim with the State Police Financial Crimes Unit, squeezed my shoulder. Emma, I know this is confusing, but you were never in real danger tonight. We just needed Richard to believe you were a threat that needed to be eliminated. But the men at the house, the SUVs. All federal agents. The only real criminals tonight were Richard and his actual security team, who are currently being arrested at his estate. A car pulled up to the diner, and Jake got out, still wearing the same clothes from our house but now with a small recording device clipped to his shirt. When he saw me, his face crumpled with relief. He breathed, rushing over. God, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you everything, but the FBI said it wasn't safe, that Richard might have been monitoring our conversations. I held up a hand to stop him. How long have you known? About your father's crimes? Jake's shoulders sagged. I found the falsified loan documents last Christmas. That's why I was so weird about money, about the post-nuptial agreement Dad wanted. I was trying to protect you from being legally connected to his fraud. And the lawsuit? When you sued him for defamation, the FBI realized it was perfect cover for their investigation. Your discovery requests would force him to turn over financial records that they'd been trying to get warrants for. Jake looked at me with tears in his eyes. Emma, you accidentally gave them everything they needed to take him down. Agent Torres stepped forward. Mrs. Morrison, your father-in-law has been arrested on federal fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy charges. The defamation case against you will be dropped. And thanks to the evidence gathered through your lawsuit, we'll be able to recover most of the stolen money for his victims. I looked around at all the agents, at Kim, at Jake standing there looking terrified that I'd never forgive him. 6 months ago, I just wanted my father-in-law to stop calling me names. Now I'd apparently helped bring down a criminal enterprise. So what happens now? I asked. Jake stepped closer, hope flickering in his eyes. Now we rebuild. Just us, without my father's poison. If you'll let me. For the first time in months, I smiled without forcing it. Yeah, I said. Let's rebuild. Update, 6 months later. Richard Morrison was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Jake and I bought a small house 3 states away, far from the Morrison name and a luxury car empire built on lies. He's teaching high school history now, and I started my own marketing consultancy. Sometimes I still can't believe that standing up to a bully accidentally helped the FBI catch a criminal. But mostly, I'm just grateful that the man I married turned out to be exactly who I thought he was, someone willing to do the right thing, even when it meant losing everything. AITA for suing my father-in-law? Not even a little bit.